Good morning, everyone. I'll just give everyone a minute to jump in on the webinar and we'll get into it. Okay, I think that'll be enough. Welcome everybody to our Solution 3000 webinar. We're going to be having a series of webinars coming up over the next couple of days and some more on different products and topics next week. But today we're going to be looking at the Solution 3000. So I am Brent, for those of you who don't know me already, and I work in tech support out of the Christchurch office with Paul and Brent Stokes. Let's get into it. So I'm just going to share my screen. Cool. So from beginning, here we go. So is that working? Okay, cool. So just to give me a bit of feedback to make sure that this is working, everybody, there should be a little raise hand button down the bottom. Just to ensure that everyone can hear me and see my screen. Can everyone just raise your hand, make sure we're all up and running and good to go? Okay. Whoa, okay. Awesome. Okay, we're all good. So, all right, let's get into it. So let's have a look at the Solution 3000s. And as I've mentioned, over the next coming days, we're going to be splitting this into 3 separate sessions. So today we're going to be looking at a quick and easy basic introduction to the Solution 3000. It shouldn't take more than half an hour. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at the programming and configuration. So that's a little bit more detailed and that'll take about an hour. We'll see how we go through it. And then finally on Friday, we're going to be looking at the B426M app and how to program the Solution 3000 over the A-Link Plus software using our direct link lead or remotely using the B426M to connect to it. So throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, you'll see a little Q&A button down the bottom. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, just fill it in there. And at the end of the session today, I'll just quickly review that and see how we go and follow up with any questions if you have anything. And also you're all aware of the raise hand button. So just so I don't feel like a weirdo sitting in an office talking to a computer by myself, I'll just get you to hit the raise button just to get a little bit of feedback. So hit the raise button. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. All right. So let's get into it. So let's have a look at the main features of the Solution 6000. So the Solution 3000, sorry, not the 6000. The 3000 has 16 fully programmable zones. It also supports up to 16 wireless devices, can support up to 32 user codes, 32 key fobs, 2 areas. It has automatic arming and disarming. It has an optional app, or it has an app available with an optional IP module. Built-in 256 memory event log. It has 4 onboard programmable outputs, but you can expand these to a maximum of 20 using the B308, which we'll look at in a minute. 4-day alarm, also commonly known as chime zones, and 4 reporting routes for the app. You can also use it for sending email alerts and communicating to a monitoring station using CSV IP reporting. And also there is multiple end-of-line resistor values for easy upgrades. So if you're taking over a system or upgrading a system, instead of going to each individual detector and replacing the resistors, you could just change the end-of-line resistor value in programming to save you a little bit of work. But just bear in mind, once you do this, it will only support a maximum of 8 zones. It won't allow zone doubling, which we'll cover in our next session tomorrow. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the product matrix. So this pretty much is a layout of how the system all goes together. So you can you see my mouse moving at all? Just raise your hand if you can see that or not. That works. Okay, cool. So you can see the main PCB or the panel, and this green line indicates how all of the modules get connected to the system via the SDI2 bus or the keypad bus. So you can connect up all your keypads, all of your modules like your Ethernet module or your B450M module, which we'll have a look at later, and also your B308 8-way relay board and your receiver. So Using the Radeon receiver, you can support a variety of wireless detectors, like your motion detectors, glass break detectors, smoke detectors, door reads, remotes, and tilt switch. And you can also use the famous Connect Security TR800 receiver. Raise your hand if you've installed one of those before, please. Let's see how many we get. About 24 people have used those. Cool. Yeah, so that's a little bit different. That receiver doesn't support wireless detectors because pretty much rule of thumb is if the panel has a little white plug, if you're familiar with our older panels, if it uses the white plug, it only supports remotes to set and unset and trigger outputs. It doesn't support wireless devices on the little WE800 EV2 plug, but we'll have a look at that in more detail shortly. We've also have these little Vonet or Vonets Wi-Fi to Ethernet adapters. So they've been pretty popular lately because if you're installing a IP module, it can be a little bit of a mission to get the run an Ethernet cable to the modem and getting it down to the wall, to the modem down the wall to plug it in, because they can be in some pretty weird places sometimes. So that's just a quick and easy and cheap way to plug it in, connect it to Wi-Fi, and it's one less cable that you need to worry about. And then you've also got the IUI SOL adapter. That is what we use to plug into the panel to program through our laptop, and also to perform firmware updates. I think I've got everything there, so let's go to the next slide. So let's have a look at our keypad options. So here is our main ones. We actually have about 7 different keypads, but these are the most common ones. You're probably all familiar with the icon keypad with the stay and away buttons. So if you're familiar with like our old school CC844s or CC880 Solution 16 panels, it's the exact same programming procedure. So if you're familiar with those panels, it'll be a very easy learning curve to program the 3000. All they've done is developed more options and added more locations to program. But it's basically the same programming procedure, like your location away, stay away, and all of that. And then we also have the Touch One 5-inch and the text keypad. So if you're partitioning a system because remember, you can have 2 partitions on the system. I wouldn't recommend using the icon keypad for that, because there's not a hell of a lot of feedback to show which area is set or unset. But if you're using the Touch One 5 or the text keypad, you can use the up and down arrows to navigate to the area, and it'll indicate if that area is armed or disarmed. So it's a little bit easier doing it from one keypad. So the icon keypad is standard for all of our 3000 kits, but you can upgrade to the Touch One starting from 125 plus GST. So if you're buying one of our kits and you want to upgrade to a touchscreen, you can just upgrade for another $125. Next slide. Okay, so let's have a bit of a closer look at the Touch One Mini. The same applies to the 7-inch one, because we got a 7-inch Touch One as well. So activities on the icon keypad would normally require a manual and are easily carried out on the Touch One graphical user interface. Functions made easy for the user are they can arm and disarm by area, create and change user pins, add and delete key fobs, name and bypass zones, operate automation outputs, set the date and time. And another pretty cool feature with this is that you can pair it with your smartphone or your smartwatch to your Bluetooth. So that way, when you come home, your phone or your watch will automatically pair with the keypad, and then we'll go, oh, somebody's home, and it will automatically disarm the keypad or the system for you. One thing I should mention also is the power requirements for the Touch One Mini. They're pretty power happy or grunty. They use at least 650 milliamps. And the Solution 2000 or 3000 only puts out about 1100 milliamps. So if you have 2 Touch Ones on the same system, you're already running over capacity, and that's excluding your detectors and sirens and so on. So if you are adding a second keypad, just remember that you will need to install a second power supply as well to compensate for the extra load on the system. And also, because they're pretty grunty, remember 650 milliamps, you need to run them on 0.4 or 0.5 cable. They don't really tend to run so well on 0.2 because of the volt drop over certain distances, and they'll just keep rebooting. So just make sure that, remember, if you have two on the system, you need a second power supply, and to run, if you're installing one, always put in 0.4 or 0.5 4-core or 0.2 6-core, and you can just double up two of the pairs. That makes sense? Hands up, everyone, if that makes sense. Beauty. All right. Smashing it. Okay. So we have a few receiver options available on this one. We're going to focus on these two, and then I'll have a look at the third one later once we've covered a few other things. So if you want to, so the first option we have is the radio receiver. This receiver supports wireless devices and key fobs. This connects to the keypad bus, and there is also a repeater option available. So if you have bad signal or bad range, you can just install a repeater in the middle, and that'll boost or bunny hop the signal to increase your distance. We also have the CSP TR800. This does not support wireless devices on the 3000. Because this connects to the WE800 port on the PCB with the supplied cable. So that's the little white plug that plugs on the board. So just remember, if you're using that white plug on any solution panel, it doesn't support wireless detectors. And this has 4 onboard outputs, and they are only triggered with remotes. Next thing to look at is the B308 relay module. So this is a output expander pretty much. It will give you, if you install one of these, it's going to give you another 8 relays. It has dip switching addressing, because if you add a second one, you're going to need to address the first one as number 1 and the second one as number 2, which we'll discuss shortly. They have a maximum of 1 amp and can connect up to 5 to 24 volts DC. These allow a remote control of the outputs via the app, and they have a quick connect cable included, which I'll usually show on these webinars or in training, but because I'm in our new office, I don't have any stock here. But pretty much, I don't know if you can see my mouse moving there. You've got these 2 little white plugs, and there's one on the main board. So all you have to do is plug in the main loom cable on the panel and plug it on the little white plug, and that'll automatically connect it and save you getting your 4-core and wiring it up yourself. And you can have a maximum of 2 B308s on the system. So in total, giving you a maximum of 20 outputs. So remember, we spoke about the radio and receiver and the B308, which we just discussed. So we have a new TR800 receiver called the TR800BR, and that basically consists of a radio receiver and a B308 module squished into one little unit. So this is the new one we released about 6 months ago, and we've been selling quite a few of them. We had a little bug in the first one, which has been resolved. And this connects to the keypad bus, the same as the radio and receiver. It has 4 onboard outputs. You can program these outputs as a B308 in your programming, and also learn remotes to relays. So the cool thing with this is you can program an output on the TR800BR to trigger from the app, and also learn that same relay from a remote on your remote. So both of them will trigger the same output on the receiver, whereas before you would have to have 2 different event types on your panel. So you'd have to program an output for a remote control for your app and another output for the push button on your remote, and then connect them in parallel to your relay to trigger one garage door. So you don't have to do that anymore. You can point them all to one relay, which is pretty awesome. Does that make sense? Hands up if that makes sense. Yep, cool. And don't forget, if you have any questions, just put it in the Q&A down the bottom, and I'll look into that in a minute. Okay, also we have the B426M Ethernet module. So this is the module that you connect to your system if you want to use the app. So this is a quick and easy to install and set up. All it does is every time you buy one, it comes with a QR code in the box, and we throw away the confusing instructions and include a little cheat sheet. And all you have to do is scan the QR code on your phone, and that automatically learns it into the system. So that's going to be coming up on Friday. We'll go through that and getting that all working. But the app is free, the registration is free, the notifications are free, and there's no ongoing costs. This supports CSV IP reporting. You can also send emails, but that's pretty much obsolete now. You can still do that if you want, but with the push notifications coming through to your app, that's made emails kind of obsolete. Some people still use it, but whatever. And for redundancy purposes, you can have two B426Ms connected onto the system. You can also have one B426M and a B450M, which is the GPRS version, as a backup. So you can communicate through the local network, and if there's a power cut, you can still have a backup going through the B450M through Vodafone or Spark or somebody. So all native 3000 accessories connect to the panel via a 4-wire SDI2 data bus, also known as the keypad bus. Because of this, devices need to be addressed and enabled in programming. So devices are addressed by family. The family groups are keypads, output expanders, and communicators. Keypad 1 is the only SDI2 device already enabled by the panel. If any additional keypads are attached, they will not function until they have been enabled in programming by allocating each to an area. So for example, if you have two keypads, I'm sure a lot of you have done this. Raise your hand if you've done this, but let me just ask the question first, I suppose. So if you, yeah, I can see a few of you putting your hands up. So if you have two keypads and you just connect them up to the system, mount them to the wall, and you power it up, they're both going to cause a conflict because they addressed both as keypad number 1. So what you need to do is address it as keypad number 1 and keypad number 2, and then in programming, assign keypad number 2 to an area. So basically what I'm trying to say is, if two modules or devices have a conflicting address, both are not going to work. So you need to give them a unique one so the system can individually figure out which one belongs to which. Yeah. And that is, how long did that take? That pretty much sums it up. That was only about 20 minutes, so I smashed through that one. So I guess that'll give us some time to look at the Q&A if you have any questions. But tomorrow around this time, we're going to be looking at the programming and configuration. And Friday, we're going to be setting up the B426M and the A-Link Plus programming. So let's have a look at the Q&A, see what... yeah, Lance McCormick. What about the Radeon version? I've covered that. I think you asked that question before I brought that up. So also Lance and his team found the bug in the first version of the TR800BR, which has since then been resolved. And that was an issue with the door read if you're using the external input. It just didn't really work if you're wiring in a MED44 roller door read or a Tane 50 or something like that. But that's been resolved and is working now. So thanks for pointing that out to us, Lance. Can you have a touchscreen keypad and icon keypad on the same alarm? Yes, you can, definitely. I think the icon keypad only uses about 60 milliamps, so you should be fine. Yeah, but just bear in mind if you have like maxed out the system with 16 detectors, you might want to consider putting in another power supply, because remember the Touch 1 is quite grunty and uses a lot of power. Andre, you said no wireless devices can be connected wirelessly to the 3000. Please explain. You can have wireless devices, but you need the Radeon receiver or the new CSP TR800BR receiver, which basically has the Radeon receiver and the B308 squished into one receiver. So you can definitely have wireless detectors on a 3000. But remember, there is a 2000 also, which is basically the same thing as the 3000, except it only supports 8 detectors or 8 zones and no wireless detectors. So hopefully that answers your question, Andre. Will a 7-inch screen now come with the in-wall PSU as standard? I'm not too sure about that, but just to cover what you're talking about there is we have an in-wall power supply. So if you are doing an upgrade and they have 0.2 run to the keypad, but you want a touch screen installed there, we have a little 230 volts to 12 volt DC power supply. So you can wire that into the back of the light switch to power the touchscreen locally, pretty much to get you out of jail. But I don't think that'll be coming as standard. Let me double check that for you, Lance. Okay, what else have we got here? Are keypads completely independent if assigned to different areas, i.e. will no sound entry exit delays for other areas? Okay, or if you jump in on the programming tomorrow, Mike, we'll be covering how to program keypads and assigning them to areas. So you can basically say this keypad is assigned to area 1, area 2, or area 1 and 2. With the older firmware, I think it was up to version 2.0, the keypad would not give you entry and exit delays if the keypad was assigned to both areas. Since releasing version 2.0.5, that was a bit of a fix that they released in that, and I understand that that is working now. So if that's something that's caused you any grief, Mike, just upgrade the firmware to 2.0.5, which you can download from our website, and that should solve that problem for you. Peter, I'll talk to Brent about that one. I'm not too sure if I should raise that in this forum, but good question. Is the TR800 Radeon capable for wireless devices? Yes, it is, because the TR800 Radeon basically has the Radeon receiver and the B308 built into one unit. So yes, that'll definitely work. The TR800 Radeon, not the TR800 BD, which is the older version. Let me just confirm that the TR800 BD does support wireless devices, but only on the older panels like your 880 Ultimas, and they're the ones that use the positive, negative, and IP on the board. Because remember, on the TR800 BD, it has another 2 receivers built into it, which is the RF3212E, which is the white one with the red LED and the 2 antennas sticking out the side. Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. The RF3212E. Yep. So the TR800 BD includes the RF3212E and the WE800 EV2. And the way to differentiate between them is toggle between dip switch 2. So hopefully that makes sense. Are you fixing the issue with the key icon key fob flap? That's not a major. We had a batch with the flap when it closed. It's just leaving a slight little gap. I believe Bosch is looking into it, so I haven't had too many complaints about that though. And see you tomorrow. Cool, thanks, Peter. Okay, so any other questions at all? One more question popped up. Can we use a B810 as a repeater? Nope. It's called a RFRP is what you need. It basically looks exactly the same as the B810 receiver, little black box, but it's got a built-in battery backup and a little AC plug that you plug into a power socket to obviously charge up your battery. And obviously, because it's got a built-in backup battery, if there's a power failure, it'll run on the backup battery and continue to boost the signal. So yeah, good questions. So yeah, how are we going for time? More or less 25 minutes, so smashed it. So we'll leave it at that. There's no other questions, so thank you for attending, everyone. And don't forget to join in tomorrow and we'll cover over the programming and see what other questions you can come up with. So yeah, thank you for all attending and I'll catch up with you tomorrow. Cheers.